For tonight's show, we'll be discussing the Stephenville Lights with Mrs. Angela Joyner. She was a regular reporter, but then the Stephenville Lights changed all that. Her journey into the unknown began, and as they say, the rest is history. You can learn more about Mrs. Joyner at her site, angelajoyner.com, and that is ANGELIAJOINER.com, and also at StephenvilleLights.com. Just go ahead and punch both those in the Google search engine or any search engine you choose. Tonight's program will be broken down into two segments. The first hour will be an interview with Mrs. Angela Joyner, followed by another hour of open lines. The call-in number to tonight's show is 760-542-3929. That is 760-542-3929. Real quick, last night I talked to Blog Talk Radio. Their program was completely messing up. That could explain Monday night, because when I was on with Diane Hennessy-Powell, I couldn't get my microphone on, and I assumed that night it was me, but this night it turned out to be, I think it's all Blog Talk Radio. So everything's working good tonight, though, and we'll get on to the show. Diane? What am I saying? Angela, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Good. I was a little flustered. I had to give everyone a little bit of a heads up about what happened last night, and I appreciate your patience in all this.
Oh, no problem. Since I run into those sort of things myself sometimes, I know how it is.
Now, you've got a radio show yourself, and can you tell us when that is and where to find that?
Oh, sure. I have a show on Friday nights. It's 9 to 11 p.m. Central Time. It's called The Joyner Report, and you can get to it on my website, angelajoyner.com, or it's through UFO Paranormal Radio Network.com. There's probably some of your listeners that are familiar with that. That is Joe Montano's setup, and we have a good time in there. I've interviewed some very interesting people, and I'd be happy if anybody tune in.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about it since with Blog Talk Radio kind of screwing up the schedule. I don't know that I'll be doing a show tomorrow night, and I actually may just go ahead and kick back and tune into your show. So tell us about yourself. Tell us what's the deal with Stephenville. What happened?
Well, I received a phone call on January the 9th from a gentleman named Steve Allen, and this is January the 9th, 2008. So he began to tell me about this extraordinary event that had happened with he and three of his friends the night before, which would have been January the 8th. And I was listening, and, of course, I immediately picked up on the fact that he said, I've been a pilot for 30 years. So I'm thinking to myself, well, a pilot they ought to know what's in the sky and what isn't, Well, then the other thing is, he said all three of the people that were with him that evening were willing to talk to me. So I said, okay. Well, I call my buddy over at the Stephenville Airport, and because Steve had told me that's where his hangar is for his plane. And I knew the manager, and I said, hey, this guy named Steve Allen keeps his plane out there? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, well, what kind of a guy is he? Well, he's a real nice guy. He said, I've been knowing him a year and a half, something like that. And I said, well, he's called me about something pretty strange. And then he goes, he called you too? He said, we've been trying to help him figure out what that was all morning. So I'm going, okay. So I talked to the other three people, and I decided to write a story about it. First of all, I thought it was an interesting story that they saw this thing above them in a little community outside of Stephenville called Selden. And they had built a little...
Were they in their plane? Were they actually in the air?
No, they were on the ground.
Okay.
And they had been clearing some brush and stuff. And kind of finished up that and decided to, build a little campfire light thing, and they were just out there in the... Selden's a real rural place. But something fly over. And Steve said this thing was huge. He he told one reporter one time that, oh, you don't understand, this thing was as big as a Walmart. And he always said he regretted saying that because that's what went all over the place, and he felt like he sounded like a hillbilly, you know. Anyway, he said as it was going over, he was looking at a horizontal set of lights. And as he was watching, trying to think of what this could be, the lights broke apart and turned into two vertical sets of lights. It flew back towards Stephenville and kind of stopped there. And anyway, he said he just couldn't figure out what he was seeing. And they went. One of the men that was with them just got in his pickup and left. Okay, and it was disturbing to him. So they go in the house of Mike Odom. It's Mike Odom's place, and his wife had just come home from work, and they're telling her, he doesn't believe this huge thing just flew over. It was like something from another world, whatever, and she's going, oh, yeah, right, whatever, you know. And they're going, no, really, really. So she calls the guy that had left. His name was Lance Jones. And said, what is going on? Are they just pulling my leg or what? He said, get outside. It's coming back. He was over on the highway, but, you know, he could still see it. So they all go outside again. It comes back over, but this time there are two F-16s, and he told me that day they were either F-16s or F-15s, and the only way you could tell the difference is by looking at the tail, and, you know, he wasn't sure, but he said it was one of those. I said, okay. So,
wow.
Then the wife comes out, you know, and they all three see it, you know, again. It was the first time for her. Now, she used to be a stewardess, so she kind of has an idea of what was in the sky, too. And it was just really bizarre. But I wrote the story because I thought it was an interesting story. It was coming from people in the community, and you know how that is. You always like to read stories about people in your community, what they're doing or whatever. And I just thought, well, I'm going to write this. Now, the publisher was very much for it. The editor was in a hurry to leave that day. She kind of knew what we were working on, but she was leaving early that day. And I wrote the story, and, you know, we started trying to figure out what the headline was going to be. And normally I don't do too much with headlines, but I did that night, and the publisher did too. Usually the paginator is the one that does headlines. So it was a big deal. Do you put UFO in the headline? Or, you know, what do you put? I said, yeah, we're going to put UFO because that's what it is. It's an unidentified flying object, and they don't know what it was, so I think that's appropriate. And the publisher did also.
To clarify this, before this, you had never written on, I mean, this was,
no.
I talked to you, and you said this was basically out of your perception, your realm of reality to touch upon this topic.
I never had any interest in UFOs before this happened. You know, if I saw a show about something like that on TV, well, I might watch it and think, that's pretty good. And then I never thought another thing about it. I wasn't somebody that, you know, bought books about it or magazines about it, or it just wasn't anything really that particularly interested me. And I really, I hate to say this, but I kind of thought that it was a unusual group of people that really saw these things. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's no nice way to say it, but I kind of thought, you know, people that talked about this stuff were nut jobs, okay? So, but, you know, I knew these people were okay. They were credible, you know. It was just, I don't know how to explain it. But anyway, UFO ended up going in the headline. And just the first part of the headline made it above the fold. It wasn't the main story on the front page. And Steve Allen, one of the things that he wanted me to do was put his phone number in that article. I said, are you sure you want me to put your phone number in here? Because, you know, I don't know if that's a good idea. He said, oh, yeah, do, because I know this thing was so big that somebody else saw it. I think a lot of people saw it. That's what he said. They had to have. And I thought, okay. And we put that in there, and the next day it ran, which would have been January the 10th. I started getting all kinds of phone calls, and he began getting all kinds of phone calls. And I was just kind of blown away. I thought, oh, my God, what went on here? And then I was getting calls. Is that the reason we have all of this increased military traffic today? Did you find out what it was? And I'm thinking, increased military traffic? Well, I didn't know about that because I was inside in the office. Mm-hmm. So when I left to go to lunch at about 12:30 or so, out in the parking lot, as I got to my car, I hear this boom, 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 and I look up, and it's 2 military transport helicopters, and they're pretty low. Oh. And I'm going, well, I wonder if this is what everybody's talking about, you know? Well, it wasn't just those helicopters. It was jets. It was you name it. Now, we're all used to seeing jets here because Fort Worth is north of us and about 70 miles, and there's a base there. And it used to be Carswell. Now it's called the Naval Joint Reserve something. So anyway, they fly over us with those jets to get to the Brownwood military operating area, which is a little south. So we're used to that. And but there was so much more, and nobody could believe it, you know. So I picked out about 4 people that said they too had seen things, and I wrote another story about that the next day. One of those people that I wrote about was a constable. He had seen it. Well, I'm going, well, you can't get much better than a constable on a UFO story. You know, elected officials don't talk about stuff like this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely, I agree.
So, yeah. And it snowballed from there. And once the Associated Press reporter Angela Brown interviewed Ricky Sorrells, it went international in about 14 hours. And it was just an incredible, after that we started having news trucks roll in, all kinds of phone calls from radio stations, TV stations. It was just the wildest thing I've ever seen.
Now, didn't the interview with Ricky Sorrells, that was a trick, was it not? Did they not con him into that and lie to him in regards to what they were going to do at that interview?
At the time, Ricky, he was not familiar with media, and he did not know what Associated Press was. They did identify themselves as Associated Press, but when they started to take pictures, he goes, whoa, I don't really want any pictures taken. And she goes, oh, well, it's only for our website. We're just going to post them on our website, you know. Okay. So he goes, well, I guess that's okay. Well, a couple of hours later, his wife was in one of the retail stores here that had televisions, and he was all over the screens, you know, and she's calling him going, what did you do? You're all over the TV. And he was going, what? And he did not understand exactly. And Angela Brown told me later that was the first time any story she had done that people had taken the photos. But, you know, they had gotten the photos off the site. But as you and I know, Associated Press is a subscription, and that's where a lot of news papers and news outlets, once they subscribe, they can use anything that they have, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it was a combination that she didn't really tell him how far it could go because she didn't think it would go that far, and he didn't understand exactly what they represented, you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I see 2 stories here. One is just the incredible nature of the event, and the other story is like the corporate giants ascending on or descending on the town and just creating a whirlwind of entertainment and then disappearing, and people are kind of left in the wake of this.
Right.
Is that pretty
and,
close to
you know,
it?
as far as Ricky is concerned, he feels like he was tricked. Yes, he does not have a good opinion of the Associated Press at all. So, yes, and it was just was something where everybody was thrust into the limelight. No one was used to it. It was, you know, this is Stephenville is a town of about 17,000 people. Now, we have a university called Tarleton State University. It's a branch of A&M. So every semester, our population goes up by about 9,000. But generally, it's pretty quiet here, and it's not, it's not a hustle-bustle kind of a big city deal. So, yeah, this was unusual for us, and to receive all that attention. You know, the last time this town got any attention was in the 90s when the football team, the high school football team, the Yellow Jackets, won state. So, that's what this town's always been about. It's been about football and cowboys. Stephenville is known as the cowboy capital of the world. We have many professional rodeo cowboys that live here. So that's what we were known for until that first story. And we were known as the best sighting since the Phoenix Flats happened in '97.
Now, this occurred in 2008, and wasn't it in the fall when it happened?
No, it was in January.
In January of 2008. So dead of winter. And was the college back in session then? And
not
how many
quite.
people saw this?
I think that the college was going to start like the following Monday, or I don't know, which might have been like the 12th or 14th. I can't really remember. But I don't believe they were back in session yet.
So how many total people? Because I was going through some of your interviews and looking at the different papers, and there were hundreds of people that saw this. And have they got them documented now, or? Well,
what happened was Mutual UFO Network called me, a guy that was the state assistant state director, I guess, and chief investigator. His name was Steve Hudgens. I had never heard of Mutual UFO Network, had not a clue that there was an organization that you could report these sightings to. I'd also never heard of Peter Davenport. You know, he has a site where he takes reports. Well, we decided that we needed to get a location where everybody could come in and file a report, you know. So we had trouble finding a place that would help us free of charge. So we ended up in Dublin, just like 12 miles away, at the Lions Club building, which is a very old building. It's got a wooden floor, but it was pretty big. And, you know, we didn't know how many people at that point, really. Oh, my gosh. There were so many people there, you couldn't shake them with a stick. And the news people, the cameras and everything, there's a picture of them on my website. We had this little room off to the side, and Steve announced, and he said, okay, anybody that is a witness, please go to this room over here to the right. Well, my a line formed that was way out the door. And TV cameras started turning towards them, and people started leaving. They did not want to be on TV. So Steve and I are looking at each other and go, oh, no, this is not good. And he brought 50 forms, and they were passed out in just a couple of minutes, and there were still people wanting forms. So we had to take one, run it across the street where there was a copier, make more. I don't know. He might have handed out 250 forms. I don't know. There was a bunch. Wow. And then, you know, people were leaving because they didn't want to be on TV. So we ended up having another one a couple of weeks later, and we didn't get near the turnout that we did for that first one, but we still got some people, and media cameras weren't allowed. You could come in and talk to people, but you couldn't take any pictures, you know. So
Now, how far after the first article that you wrote until this event occurred?
Well, the meeting in Dublin, I'm not sure. I can't remember what the date is right off the top of my head, but it took place probably a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks after the first report that I got, simply because we did have problems finding a place. We tried the high school gymnasium and places like that, and nobody's really interested, having us there. So it was a strange deal, and the Stephenville community, some of the people really were into it, but the higher echelon of people were sort of embarrassed by it. I know the Chamber of Commerce had a meeting, and they were going to meet about the publicity, what they should do, how they should handle it, blah, blah, blah. And they decided, look, we're not going to do anything. We do not want to become the next Roswell, and we want to remain the cowboy capital of the world and the city of champions for the football team, and let's just hope this dies down pretty soon. That was really, their opinion. So anyway, then other people, enjoyed it, but it was.
What was their response towards you? What was their response towards you, the Chamber of Commerce?
They never talked to me. They were talking to the publisher because the publisher was on the board for the Chamber.
And how long? So you wrote one article, and then you wrote another, and then because at some point they said drop it. What was the time?
Yeah, I wrote several articles. Even some with Ricky Sorrells. He didn't want me to write at all. Actually, when Ricky Sorrells contacted me, he contacted me out of fear for my safety. And he came in the office, and we went into a private room, and he said, look, I don't want you to report about anything that I'm telling you. I'm afraid something is going to go wrong. And he told me that he had people coming on his property in the middle of the night. He had found a bullet shell, a bullet that was dropped, not just a shell, it was still loaded, that didn't belong to him.
Wow.
He told me that he had these black, unmarked helicopters flying over his property, real low, so low that they were spooking his cattle. And he was worried that they were going to run his cattle through the fences. And, if that's, I don't know if you are familiar with farmers and ranchers and stuff, but those cattle represent an investment. And the last thing you want is for them to be all cut up in barbed wire fences or something.
Oh, yeah. To answer that question, yes, I am, but I'm glad you're explaining it for our listeners.
Well, so he was pretty upset about that, about him running his cattle. Another time, he said it was so bad he couldn't sleep, so he heard the helicopters. He went out, and this was in the middle of the night, and actually, if you knew Ricky, you would understand this, but he lives out in the country. There's nobody around. He put on his boots and went out in his underwear and was looking to see what was going on, and so he has a spotlight on his truck because he spots like coyotes sometimes. And he just turned on that spotlight and threw it up there. And the guy in the helicopter was so close that he threw his hand up, his forearm up above his face because the light was so bright. That's how low he was. Ricky could see him do that. And then he said he started realizing what a vulnerable position he was. He turned off the spotlight and went back in the house,
That's incredible.
Yeah, he had a lot of things happen. He also had somebody that identified themselves as military that called him. They wanted to come visit with him. He said, look, I've talked to everybody I'm going to talk to. I'm not talking to anybody else, so I don't really want to meet with you. And he was still upset about the Associated Press interview, and the guy didn't like that. He said, well, I'm on my way. I'm coming to see you. And Ricky said, you better not cross my cattle guard. And the guy, he said, look, why don't you quit flying your helicopters over my airspace? And the guy said, it's not your airspace, it's mine. He said, well, if that's the truth, then what does it take? The guy told him, if you'll shut up about what you've seen, I'll stop the helicopters. He said, okay. So the helicopter stopped. He didn't.
That's incredible.
I know, it was weird. But anyway, he was worried about me because he was afraid that I would get some phone calls, or people might, although I lived in town, might start threatening me or something like that. And I did not know him. I knew the sorrel's name, okay? But I didn't know him. And that's just the kind of guy he is. So he was concerned that I could be hurt or something happened. So I said, look, I'm not worried about that because they're not going to bother me because they know I'm going to write about whatever happens. So I told him the best thing for you to do is come forward. Tell me about this stuff. Let's write a story about it. The more public you are, the less chance they have of doing anything to harm you or anybody else or keep harassing you.
Absolutely,
it took him about 2 weeks. It took him about 2 weeks, but finally he got so mad about his cattle being run that he did. I wrote 2 stories about him. And then after that, a couple of days, the editor asked me, look, you need to drop this UFO stuff and get back to regular business and, whatever. Don't write any more of this stuff. I said, okay. Well, I'm going and thinking to myself, well, we've had several sellout days. I mean, and that's what we're supposed to be doing is selling newspapers.
Absolutely.
And I went back to my desk.
So this is actually good for the business. This was good for business, these UFO stories.
Heck yeah.
Papers.
They'd never had a sellout day before.
There was also some local businesses that really profited. I believe I was listening to an interview, and you said something about what was it? I'm thinking T-shirts, maybe?
Yes, it's a place. It's called Barefoot Athletic, and they immediately saw the opportunity. They started designing T-shirts, putting them online, putting them out in their store. In 10 days, they sold $90,000 worth of T-shirts. So, that's just one example. Here in Dublin, we're home of Dublin Dr. Pepper, and it's the oldest Dr. Pepper bottling plant, and it's the only plant that uses the original recipe that has pure cane sugar in it.
Oh, wow.
And they started selling T-shirts, and there was a flying saucer on the T-shirt. It said, I know why they're here, and it looked like the flying saucer was sucking up Dr. Pepper into it, And so, they did really well. And I'm sure there were some other places, too. This is not just a place that I knew about. The high school science club made more money than they had ever made before because they designed a T-shirt, and they made $4,000. And the teacher told me, he said, we could have done a lot more, but she said, we just had to cut it off because I had to get back to teaching and they had to get back to learning. So, there was a lot of things that, going on like that. You could drive down the road and the highways and stuff, and the signs, I remember the pizza place, local pizza place said, flying saucer, parking available or something like that. All the signs had something like that on them. And it was just incredible. But when the editor told me that, I went back to my desk, and I really did try to do what they were asking me to do. But I was still the media contact. I was still the witness contact. I was still receiving hundreds of emails. Twice my email had to be dumped because it was so jammed up. I couldn't do it. It just froze up. And then and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. So I tried to put those calls and things to after hours or lunch hour or something like that. Well, it really wasn't manageable that way, but I tried to do it, and then I don't know if you know who Robert Powell was, but he is the he's the National Research Director for Mutual UFO Network, and he and I have been talking quite a bit, and the editor heard me say one night that I was going to go meet Robert for dinner at Chili's, and she said, I thought I told you to stay away from that. I said, well, this is my own time. It's not newspaper time. And, she rolled her eyes and huffed off, whatever. And so the next day I go in and I talk to her. I said, oh, look, I don't know what to do about all these emails and all these phone calls. She said, just ignore them. Just hit delete on the emails and don't talk to these witnesses. Don't take any more calls on UFOs. So after that, I went and wrote my resignation letter, and I said, look, I can't do this. I can't treat these people this way. Their whole world has been turned upside down because some of them really had issues with their religious beliefs. Some of them were going to their pastors, preachers, and it was disturbing to them. Steve Allen couldn't sleep. I mean, his wife was really worried about him. And he felt like, something might happen at Easter, and he was getting all, I thought, and then they didn't know how to handle the media. And they were dependent on me to help them, And I thought, I can't treat these people this way. So I turned in my resignation.
Even beyond that, it's a community newspaper, and they're telling you to ignore the community, which
right.
is somewhat mind-blowing. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it was, and, it was not a good situation, and the publisher was gone somewhere on some conference or something those days, and I could tell when she came back, she had obviously talked to the editor. The editor had come to me and said, look, won't you change your mind? I don't want you to leave, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I can't function the way you're wanting me to function. So I just think it's best that I go on. And then I could tell if I was getting a cold shoulder from the publisher. And then one day, about a week later, and I did give 2 weeks' notice, that I came into the office like I always do, about 9 o'clock, and I start heading for my desk, and I look, and I think, yeah, what happened? But my computer's gone. Anything that I had on my desk was gone. It was just slick. And the editor stepped out and said, Angela, and bit her head for me to come there. So I went to the publisher's office, and they proceeded to tell me how unhappy they were with me, and it was just one of the worst days of my life. I was given a box and told to pack up my stuff, and I don't know if you are familiar with a newsroom, but a newsroom, everybody's out in the open, the desks are just spaced apart and things, and the ad people and everything are on one side, the editorials on the other side. So there I was, packing up my crap in my little box with everybody staring like, oh, my God, what's happened, Wow. And, of course, I'm crying, of course. It was just horrible. It was a horrible day for me. And I never expected to be done that way. And if you must, I don't know, a small newspaper, so, people at this newspaper, if you were going on vacation, then one of us would come feed your dog or something for you. It was real friendly.
Family.
Yeah. Yeah. You helped each other out, and you did whatever. If you needed to stay late, you did it. You just whatever, and you kind of depended on each other in that way. And those two, the publisher and the editor, I would have never thought they would have treated me that way. I was shocked. And I thought we were friends as well as colleagues, and I was pretty heartbroken. So, anyway, I won't make that mistake again, I hope.
Yeah, well, it does. It seems like this whole, because my question is, and I don't know if you've gone this route, because some of these, not only was there a constable, but there were a couple of other police officers that witnessed this. Was there not?
I mean, it wasn't, it was a broad range of people. Also, there were some ranchers and people that were going, I live blah, blah, blah here, and I've been seeing this thing for 30 years, you know. It always comes around in the fall, and, you know, they didn't ever tell anybody. They were afraid to come to speak up about it because, you know, what happens to people that do. I hope that is changing now. I know that the girl from Channel 11 News was at my desk one day, and she said, Angela, how did you have the guts to report the story? I said, I looked at the cameraman, you know. She goes, no, off the record. And I said, okay. Well, I said, if you had been the one to take the call, you might have reported on it too. She said, no, not in a million years. I would have never reported on a UFO story. I said, well, I felt like the people were credible. I thought they were telling me the truth, and I thought it was a good story, so I wrote it. So then after about 6 months, I had other journalists and things that had contacted me and said, you know, you have made us feel more safe or feel better writing these kinds of stories. And because I reported these in a straight news story. I didn't mention little green men. I never said flying saucer. I just reported it the way it was told to me, and I didn't, you know, use any kind of tongue-in-cheek. So sometimes I just, if that's the only good that comes from it, is other reporters, journalists, broadcasters feel that they can report more genuinely about it without tongue-in-cheek, then it'll be worth it. Because that's one of the main things is we need mainstream media to cover these stories, and we need people to stop making fun of witnesses or ridiculing them.
Well, has anyone seen it since 2008? I believe I read somewhere that
in the fall of 2008, guess what happens? We start getting a lot of UFO reports. I have people calling me or people running into me at the grocery store and saying, God, you should have seen what I saw, blah, blah, blah. And they're telling me I thought, what the heck? Well, I was researching flights on the computer one night. My husband was running in the house and says, honey, get out here. Come look at this. And I think, oh, my God, what is it? Well, I go out there, and something looks like these big fireballs. I mean, this is in my backyard. Big fireball, then another big fireball, and another big fireball. And I go,
up in the sky.
That's flares. Those are flares. About that time, my brother called, and I had my cell phone. Are you seeing the UFO? I said, no, I'm seeing flares. Well, he's talking to his wife, says, Angela says it's flares. And he's going, I got to hang up. I got to get a picture of this. So I say, okay, didn't think anything about it. Now, I wouldn't have known they were flares if I had not just been researching Phoenix lights, right? So you can tell, though, once you've ever seen video of them, by the time the first one comes out, by the time the third one comes out, the first one is dimming and going out, is the way these were. And so it was, I thought, well, I guess they're going to start dropping flares here now. We've never had flares before.
What would you guess the elevation was of these flares?
I couldn't even tell you. When you're outside and it's dark, and you really can't see the tree line or anything to kind of judge, to get a way to, something
absolutely.
to judge what it would be, what the elevate. It's just, I can't do that. I'm not good at that stuff anyway. But
okay.
They were big and bright, and so then we had a lot of reports that when I talked to them, if they were looking in the direction of the Brownwood military operating area, I thought, well, this is probably a flare because, we know those are going on, and by their description you could sort of tell. Well, the next day I'm talking to my brother. He was saying, "Oh, that was just the weirdest thing. They were all lined up horizontal." He said, and then they moved up until they were all vertical, and I went, "What?" And I said, "What do you mean they moved up?" He said, "Well, it was like they were horizontal, and the bottom one stayed the same, and the other two moved up till they were vertical." I said, "That wasn't flares, because they would continue falling, or they would go out. They would not move up and stay equidistant and remain lit, right?"
Absolutely.
So then I got suspicious. Okay, so what are they doing? Are they only dropping flares when they know there's something in our area? And this went on for, quite a while. And on November the 17th, I got another big rash of people saying they had seen it. Somebody called me. I said, "Okay, everybody that you know of that saw it, tell them I will meet y'all tomorrow night at the airport. We'll all talk about it there." So I wrote another story then, and it ran in the Abilene Reporter newspaper. By this time, I was writing from home for them, and it was a pretty incredible thing too. One girl said, "It just reminded me of the lights on a carousel, like at the circus or carnival or something, but it looked like it had laid on its side. It was, all the lights were rotating, and it looked like it was on its side." And another girl, I asked her how large she thought it was. She said it had to be, she said it was really close to us. It had to be at least the length of 2 school buses put together. It was just incredible. And those were the last stories I wrote about it. There have been some other sightings in the Abilene area that they wanted me to write about, but it was very difficult for me to investigate something that far away. And, now that I know what I know, I feel like I need to be a little more careful about who and what I'm reporting on. I need to know, exactly. I need to be there and see which direction they were looking and all of that. So,
you feel like
you've
opened a rabbit hole? You feel like you've peered into a rabbit hole that
you're in a rabbit hole, that's for sure.
I mean, you go from a normal reporter into the realm of UFOs. Has it just gotten deeper and deeper and deeper as far as, because I'll tell you what's going through my mind right now, and I'm not a tinfoil hat person. I guess most people would think I am, but no, okay. But you've got all those military bases around there, or that military base, and they've got the deep underground military bases that are top secret. I'm almost wondering if it wasn't some kind of psychological operations type, just to see what would happen in small town America. Have you investigated?
There's all kinds of possibilities, and we could speculate all day long. It could have been anything. But let me tell you the other thing. When I called Carswell, or this base in Fort Worth, I still call it Carswell, they told me they had nothing in the air that night. Okay? So I write a story about that. This Major Carl Lewis tells me, well, I think this could have been sunlight glinting off of 2 airliners. It was at dusk. It was, this is a really strange phenomenon. I've seen it many times as a pilot, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote that story. In about 2 weeks, I'm on the phone. I get a phone call, and it's a radio station. I can't even remember which one now. And they go, "Oh, Miss Joyner, what do you think about the backtracking? What are they doing? Why is the military going back on what they told you?" And I'm going, "Huh? What? I don't know what you're talking about." Now, this Carl Lewis had my cell phone number, he had my office number, he had my email, and he had the fax number, right? And I hang up, and I barely put the phone down before the reporter from the Channel 11 News people was calling me. She's going, what is going on? They're saying they had 10 F-16s in the air that night. I said, what? I go, I'll get back with you. I run to the facts, see if there's anything there. I go through my email, looking to see if he'd sent me anything. I thought, what the heck? And I call her back. I said, I don't have anything. What did you get? She said, I didn't get it. I heard it on a radio station, and she said, I'm getting it now. They sent a press release to the radio stations only. Now, wouldn't you think if you knew that you had been talking to me and I was the one writing the stories and this thing went international, don't you think you would have sent me that press release?
Absolutely.
No, he did not send it to me.
Unless I had malicious intent to make you look, like a tinfoil hatter, I guess.
Well, so then I was mad. That made me mad, So I started trying to call him. I can't get through to him. I finally do get through to him. And I say, Carl, what's going on? What's happening? Before, he had been real talkative, friendly guy. And he said, Miss Joyner, I'm sorry. All I can tell you, or all I can say is blah, 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 blah. He started reading the press release, which by this time I had gotten hold of. And I said, Carl, I have the press release. I know what that says. How do you lose 10 F-16s for 2 weeks? I mean, can you imagine how many people it takes on the ground to put one F-16 in the air plus 10?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going, I keep trying to ask him. He keeps replying the same way. Finally, I just give up and hang up. Then I had a guy call me from Colorado. His name was Glenn Schultz. He said, I'm sending a FOIA request. I want to get the radar data. Would you like to work with me on it? And do you know anybody else that would? So what ended up happening is I put him together with Robert Powell, who, as I said, is the National Research Director for MUFON. And they write the most beautiful report. It matches to 9 of the witnesses, time and direction of which they said they saw it, and the time that they saw it, to an unknown on the radar. At times this thing was going 2,000 miles an hour, sometimes 500. Sometimes it was going as slow as 47 miles per hour. It should have fallen out of the sky. It didn't. At 8 o'clock, when the radar data was running, when it ran out, we had asked from 4 to 8 because we thought that would probably cover it, but from the reports we had and based on Steve Allen's sighting at about 6:20, 6:30, gosh, we should have asked for the whole night's worth because at 8 o'clock this thing was about 10 miles from Crawford Ranch, Bush's Crawford Ranch, flying unimpeded into restricted airspace with no transponder.
So this is actually documented. They actually have it on radar.
Yeah. It's actually documented. We announced that on Larry King Live in July. Took a lot of talking for me to get that on Larry King Live, but we finally did it, and it was. It's one of, to me, the radar data stood apart from so many other sightings because it tells you there was something solid there in the air. Tracked all of the F-16s. We identified them. We knew where they were. As a matter of fact, there was a pair of F-16s that took off from Fort Worth, went up to Oklahoma to a military operating base there. Then guess what they did? Instead of flying back normally, like you think they would, to the Fort Worth base, they fly past Fort Worth, come down here, make a loop through Comanche, Dublin, and Stephenville before they get back to Fort Worth. It's almost like you just felt like somebody told them, there's something going on down there, fly out there and take a look, Because normally they would have turned directly to that Fort Worth base.
Now, have you done any follow-up with the other ranchers that said they've been seeing it for 30 years? I mean, that blows me away in and of itself.
I know, but when something is that old, you're not really going to be able to do a lot with that. I mean, it's basically their word. Even now, say if you want to get radar data, you have got to request it within 15 days because they recycle their tapes. You know, they put it in and record over it again. So you've got to be really on the spot, get it written and sent to them, and then they'll hold it, and then they decide if they're going to give it to you or not. Well, guess what? Since we did that, it's very difficult for us to get those FOIA requests filled. And why do you think that is? I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. In Obama's open government, all transparent and everything, we're having more trouble, and it doesn't make sense. So, I don't know. But that's how it went, and we started having the flares in the fall, and then some of those flares were dropped on the night, said, I know there's something else here. I know we got some false reports because people had never seen those flares before and didn't recognize them as flares. They thought it was the UFO. So I now know what I know. I really think they were deliberately brought just to throw people off, as a cover. I think it was a cover. So I don't know. It's changed my life immensely, and now I've studied about it a lot. I've met just about everybody that's anybody in the UFO community. I can tell you that, no, these people are not nut jobs. These are some of the most educated people I have ever met in my life. They're physicists, they're scientists, they're college professors, they're from, all kinds of, people. And I really realized this when I spoke at the X conference in Washington, D.C. We were at the banquet, and I started looking around at everybody's name tags, and I kept seeing Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so. And then I find myself standing beside Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, oh, my God, there's a lot of people here, and there was no tinfoil hats. These were people who had been seriously studying this for the last 30, 40 years, It was incredible.
Absolutely. And still it brings up the question, and this is bordering on what a forum member, Nemesis 2012, asks. How do you view, or what have you heard through the grapevine as far as, it seems like there is a almost a concerted effort now in the mainstream media to subtly or maybe even it seems kind of rapidly push toward disclosure. They're covering UFOs all the time. What is your take on that?
I think they are covering UFOs more. I think some of them are still doing it with tongue-in-cheek. Some of them take it more seriously, like Miles O'Brien when he was with CNN. I think he took it more seriously. But I think one reason is they figured out that it sells. The Chicago newspaper that wrote on the O'Hare sightings, that is the their most read story ever. I think people are realizing that. They know it sells copies. They know it gets ratings on TV. The girl that I worked with at Larry King Live said normally their ratings are low on Friday night. That's why they schedule the UFO shows for Friday night, to try to get them up. It sells. So do I think disclosure is just around the corner? No, I don't. I don't think Obama is the disclosure president. I don't know when disclosure will happen, but or if it ever will. I don't think it's going to be our government or somebody else's government coming forward and saying, okay, they're here, they've been here for 60 years, and we didn't tell you because. What could they tell you about why they didn't tell us? What excuse could they make? National security, well, they've already told us that UFOs have no effect on national security. That's why they closed Project Blue Book in the late 60s after investigating for 10 or 15 years, whatever it was. So, is any government going to come out and tell their people we've been lying our butts off for all these years?
They never do.
They
never do.
If it's going to be disclosed, I think it's going to have to be through some source. Is it going to be something like WikiLeaks? What's going on right now? This Julian guy that's dumping all these classified documents.
There's a lot of
it could be.
Yeah,
it might be forced on them that way, or unless an alien being comes down and does an interview with CNN or something. I don't see any other way.
Yeah, I definitely. It's interesting though. We are seeing more of it, and there's a lot of people that are being caught in the. I mean, I'm caught in the suspense of it. I'm wondering. You're very right. It could just be a money maker, and the mainstream media has been losing viewership, so maybe they're clinging to something that they hope will bring them back around.
Well, and we're in a time now to where, it's a lot different now. Used to, you got the news at noon, 6 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. Now with these places like CNN and Fox, it's 24-hour news, okay? If there's nothing going on, it's pretty hard to fill those 24 hours. Now, the other thing that I know is if Michael Jackson had died in January the 8th, 9th, and 10th along there, you would not have ever seen my stories either, okay? Because something like that's what all the news people would go to. They would report that. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It's
So it kind of depends on what else is in the news, what's going on. But I do think sometimes CNN and Fox, when they have this 24-hour push for news, they'll use something like this to get viewers and to fill up some space.
Absolutely, sell some advertising. All right, Angela, we're almost at the top of the hour. I want to thank you again, and will you give us your website again and your
sure
radio address, your radio show address, and time, please.
The website is www.angeliajoiner.com, and my show is at 9 o'clock on Friday nights at UFO Paranormal Radio Network.com. And I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me on. I know your show is new. I know you're going to do well, and I wish you the best.
All right. Now, are you going to come back on the show if we ask in the future?
Sure.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, this interview went really well, and so far my Blog Talk Radio switchboard and everything worked out really well. So
good.
This time. So, all right then. I'll go ahead and let you go and have a good night, and hope to have you back on.
All right. Thanks so much.
I'll tune in tomorrow,
Bye-bye.
by the way. So, all right.
Do what?
I said I'll tune in tomorrow. So, good night. All right, folks. I think Angela's, yes, she's gone. So I'm going to go another few minutes. If anyone wants to call in, be my guest. The number is 1-760-542-3929. That's 1-760-542-3929. It's open lines. That was Angela Joiner. That's angelajoiner.com, and also StephenvilleLights.com. She was the reporter that broke the news on the Stephenville Lights. As she said, it could be any number of things that it really was, but I'm really wondering if it wasn't a military psyops. I was in Panama City, and I saw from a high-rise building a UFO that was shape-shifting like this. The Stephenville Lights apparently were horizontal, and they'd go vertical, and then horizontal and vertical. Well, when I was in Panama City, lo and behold, off in the skyline. It was a rainy day. There was a UFO, first one I've ever seen, the only one I've ever seen, and it too was going horizontal and vertical. And when it was horizontal, it looked like a black football, a sphere almost, but it was, football shape. But when it would go vertical, it was star shaped and like a 5-pointed star. I wasn't on drugs. I hadn't been drinking yet, and I saw it. And apparently other people saw it too. The picture I got of it was kind of not very good because I was just awestruck. I understand how it happens to see these things, and then you just blank out as far as getting your camera equipment or whatever else, because I was there. I experienced it. You're sitting there awestruck that you're seeing it, and then it's just gone. You run out of options to take photos of it. But what I find interesting is the Stephenville lights apparently rotated, up and down and everything else, and I think there's a lot of accounts of these UFOs doing that. If you get into the military black operations type stuff, what we can get of it, what's not counterintelligence, what's not there to be used against us to make us sound like idiots, there's a lot of accounts of the military having these, stealth technologies. Now, are they all based off of Roswell? I don't know. Speaking of stealth technologies, now I want to give the phone number again one more time. It's 1-760-542-3929. It's 1-760-542-3929. Speaking of stealth technologies, I wanted to cover something in the show. It's not UFOs, but it's definitely Orwellian in nature. It was on shtf411.com today. It was a thread started, and it's basically been all over the web. The Department of Homeland Security is creating, when they create something, okay, we just heard about something. When they say it's just now coming out or just now being developed, that means it's basically ready to be implemented. And what they have right now is what they call FAST, which stands for Future Future Attribute Screening Technology. Future Attribute Screening Technology, FAST. It's FAST for short, which is anything but fast in reality. What it turns out to be is a stealth technology that makes Minority Report a reality. I don't know if y'all remember that movie, Minority Report, with Tom Cruise, where you were found guilty before you did anything, just for your thoughts. Well, that's what FAST is, and it's a reality. And DHS has a video out on YouTube. I don't know if it's apparently a DHS training video, but it's picking it up like wildfire. I don't know if it was intentionally put out or I would have to bet that it was leaked. But they've got these trailers. They're in the video. It's a training video. It's by DHS. They're talking about it in some abstract future. They don't give a date. They don't give a time. They just talk about it being in development. Well, it's in development, but in the video, there's 6 of the trailers, these mobile laboratories, these FAST laboratories. There's 5 or 6 of them in the video. And what it is they trailer these laboratories to sporting events, music events like concerts, or even at the border or wherever. Maybe they're going to the FEMA camps. I don't know. But basically, they're using stealth, facial recognition, and movement, heat sensing, all that stuff to tell if you're lying. And what they do is you walk into this laboratory in a trailer. Basically, it's a trailer, is what it is. You walk in there, and you have DHS screeners that basically put you through like a lie detector test. They ask you, definite positives like why are you here, and they keep going on to establish what your normal answering range would be, and then they start asking you, well, do you have intent to set off explosives inside the arena, or do you have intent? And what was really curious is they go through a whole list of all this terrorist stuff. But one of the questions they ask is, do you have intent to illegally record the event, or do you have illegal recording devices on you now? And I find that very ironic that this is all being done for terrorism. But then even in their slogans, you start learning the real motivation behind it, and it's a corporatocracy is what we're talking about. It's not the Department of Homeland Security's business to be telling us or to be interrogating us on illegal recording equipment, or do you plan to illegally record, or whatever, wherever you're going. But that's what they're doing. And, this fast technology, future attribute screening technology, it's not some off in the future distant thing. They've got these trailers now, and they're set up and ready to go. If you find the video on YouTube, just go ahead and punch in like DHS FAST, FAST, and it should come up. Also, you can visit shtf411.com. We've got a thread going on there. But, when you watch that video, pay attention to the video. They're not talking about developing the technology to do the Minority Report type interrogations. They're talking about how the trailers are set up modularly, and in the future how the walls can be moved around and everything else. But the thing is, it was already set up. They already had the modular aspects of the trailer set up. These things are ready to go now. I mean, I don't know if anyone out there, I know everyone out there has had to see Minority Report. It's an Orwellian hell. They find you guilty and convict you before you did anything based off of an assumption that you will do it because you thought about it. We're literally living in the day and age where we've got thought crimes. Imagine it. You go into this. You're trying to go to a, Bon Jovi concert, or whoever your favorite musician is, or you're going to a monster truck rally, and the friendly little DHS guy, maybe they've got one of the big cartoon masquerading mascots out there, is ushering you into the FAST laboratory, the FAST trailer, and you go in there, and what if you're having a bad day? You're going to this event that you've had the tickets forever and a day, and you're having a bad day, so you go into this trailer, and because you're already having a bad day, the machine says you're guilty. So what happens? Where do you go? You're definitely not going into that place you thought you were going into. You're not going into the monster truck rally. You're not going into the concert. You're not going into the sporting event because the machine says you're guilty. I can only imagine when they implement this kind of stuff, it's just a matter of time before they can use that as probable cause, because they're not even using probable cause anymore, folks, but it's a matter of time before they can use that as probable cause to detain you, maybe even indefinitely, and then go ransack your entire house, your car, tow your car away. That's a car being towed is not a cheap or free thing. It gets impounded, and you owe for the tow bill, and you owe for the time in the yard, and they charge like $150 a day. It's no small matter, and it's all based off a thought crime, and that's what FAST is. Another thing that DHS is doing is Viper. Now, the TSA is run through Department of Homeland Security, and so it's part of it. Well, they're going from airport security, which they've got the backscatter machines in place, and they're you either get radiated with terahertz waves that openly cause cancer. They know they cause cancer. You either get radiated by those, or you get groped. When they had the backscatter machines fully implemented, then they went ahead and said, well, we're going to enhance the interrogation methods, which means that we're going to grope you now. And, there's a video traveling around the Internet now where they've got a really pretty blonde. I mean, hey, great, pretty blonde. I liked seeing her, naked in her wheelchair. I have no idea why she was in a wheelchair, but she's sitting in a TSA checkpoint naked. Basically, she's wearing a, bra and thong. That's naked, It's not America. That's fascism. That's the fascist states of America, when you have to have someone sitting in their bra and thong because TSA won't let them through. That's beyond a grope pat down. That's I've read where they're making these women that have body jewelry cut the let's say they have a nipple ring. Well, they're making them cut it off, cut it out of their nipple in front of people. Come on, folks. It's not America. It's not freedom. unless your idea of freedom is freedom comes at a price. So my freedom is, from what I understand, God-given. I guess that's just me. But anyway, so we've seen the TSA increase in the airports, increase their resolve to ensure there's no terrorism, even though they're groping American people and making them strip down to nothing, and then holding them there for everyone to watch. And then they don't search everyone. They don't search the Muslims with the burqas. And that's not about Muslim rights. That's about creating hate toward the Muslims, because we're in wars in the Middle East. Take it or leave it, but that's what it is. It's about creating a racial profile to hate those people. But they get out of it, and so do the TSA screeners. They don't have to go through security either. They can walk right through from outside in the parking lot all the way through up into the planes and everything. And so it's a farce. It's an absolute farce. But I had to rant on that. But to go further into that, I just covered FAST, and so it's future attribute screening technology. But what they're also going into is they're starting Viper, which is in association with the airport screenings. And what Viper is they've already got it in a few places. And what it'll be is doing the TSA screening at bus stations and at train stations. And at that point, I'm opting out of all public transportation, any kind of transportation. I'll just go ahead and drive my car and go through Craigslist and these other methods to get ride shares. But Viper is visual, intermodal, protection, and response. And basically what that means is to get on a Greyhound bus or Trailways or whatever bus company you want, you're going to have to go through, I know at some bus stations now they've got, I know in Salt Lake City and I guess Miami, I've actually been in the bus station in Salt Lake City. So I'll never take the bus again, not because of that, just because I don't know what I was thinking. I was trying to get out from flying because I hate going through the TSA crap. So, but I know they have it in Salt Lake City where they wand you and all this other stuff to see if you've got anything metal on you. And at that time when I went through there, they were only wanding and patting people down heading to Las Vegas, which I thought was really strange considering I personally don't think Salt Lake City is all that dangerous, but they were doing it then, and I guess they're doing the same thing in Miami, but Miami is a more intense method of this Viper installation. Now, I guess these would be like your starter places as far as where they're just doing a trial run to see how they go. But Janet Napolitano, who is the DHS secretary, has stated, I was listening to the interview the other day, that she wants the backscatter machines in the airport, not in the airport, they're already in the airports, but she wants them in the train stations and she wants them in the bus stations. Now, we already know that they're putting them into the courthouses. They've got a number of courthouses through the country that have these backscatter machines. Folks, these things cause cancer. They are known to cause testicular cancer and breast cancer, and beyond that, we don't know. That's the reason they give you the option to be groped. You either go through the backscatter or you get groped. It gives them, from what I can see, and I'm sure plenty of people will contradict me on this, but to me it seems pretty easily seen as being a way to defer litigation later on when people do end up with cancer or health effects from going through these scanners routinely, because they can come back and say, well, we didn't make you go through the scanners. We gave you the option of a pat down. And they're not calling it groping. Now, if I went up to someone on the street and I put my hands in a guy's crotch, well, I may end up, with a few, couple of black eyes and some missing teeth and a little bit of blood, but and maybe time in jail on top of that. Definitely the same thing with a woman. It's assault. It's sexual assault, but for the TSA guys, they can get away with it no problem. So I believe that's the reason they're giving you a choice between the backscatter or being groped. But that way they've got an out from litigation. So I covered DHS and TSA. We're living the Minority Report. We're living in George Orwell's 1984. We're living in an Orwellian hell, and it's only getting worse. Another thing I wanted to touch upon is California for their pesticides. Apparently they were using methyl bromide, but as part of the global warming, that it's not really, if you look at let me cover global warming real quick. It's not happening. You can go, I don't doubt climate change, and I don't doubt that mankind pollutes like mad, and, a lot of y'all know that I spend a lot of time in the Northwest, and I've seen the clear-cut forests. They leave a mess, and they cut down sections of land at a time, like several thousand acres at a time. A section of 640 acres. It's 1 square mile is a section, and they literally cut down several sections of land at a time, and they don't clean up the slash at all. They just leave the brush out there, and it's a mess. And the animals have a hard time. A lot of your deer, a lot of your elk, a lot of moose get impaled on the slash piles. But it's, they do it. Now, so I don't have a problem, I think we need to curb some of our habits, and I've got differing opinions on that. I don't go along with any of the stuff that we're pushed, because everything that's pushed is in a directed agenda by the establishment, by Slavery Incorporated. But global warming's not happening. Last year they had, or was it last year or the year before, they had Copenhagen, and they got snowed in. They do these global warming summits to pass all this legislation and taxation, and it's hard to pass global warming resolutions when you're in a blizzard. And the same thing goes this year. Europe's in a record cold spell. I don't have any of the information in front of me, but I was reading over the data, and those people are literally freezing. I mean, they have record temperatures. I think one place had it was the coldest it's been in 130 years, and it was like Denmark. It was somewhere cold. I was reading through all those, and I was awestruck by that. And I know a few of our members here that live up in the Northwest or in the north end of the country, and they, it sounds like they're having a fairly good winter. But anyways, California, for their pesticides, they are doing away with methyl bromide, which they're saying is the warmistas say it's bad for the atmosphere. Apparently, has nothing to do with the soil. Go ahead and pollute the soil all you want, and let the chemicals do that, but they're saying it's bad for the atmosphere. So they're doing away with methyl bromide. I haven't really checked into that chemical product, what it does, if anything. I don't know what the side effects are. I pretty much stay away from chemicals. I really like organic stuff, or I guess now it'd be beyond organic, since organic is now owned by, basically a brand name by genetically modified foods like Monsanto's. But they're doing away with methyl bromide, and they're going to methyl iodide. And y'all need to listen to this. Pay attention to methyl iodide, because this is what they're using in California. Methyl iodide is a known carcinogen. It will cause cancer. Your butt will end up with cancer, and maybe even literally, a prostate cancer, colon cancer. That is what they're now using as a pesticide in California, is methyl iodide. And it's nothing because it's better. Obviously, it's not. It's a known carcinogen. They're using it because it supposedly doesn't hurt the atmosphere. So I would definitely, anyone out there listening, start paying attention. You need to quit buying California produce. I mean, unless it's beyond organic. Beyond organic is what, when the organic movement started out, it was grassroots. You didn't need any labeling, anything special. You just, this is organic. I grew it off of my farm. I haven't used pesticides in 3 years. Blah blah blah. Well, the organic movement was growing so fast that basically your mega commercial farmers went in there and basically, like everything else, bought it off. And so now organic is registered and labeled in the stores and everything else, and you have to have a special stamp or whatever it is. I'm not very familiar with it because I don't buy it anymore. Because when they did that, it basically gave these GMO people the right to say anything that grew and came from the earth, whether it was genetically modified or not, is organic. So now they've got beyond organic, or I don't even know what they're calling it now. You can go to like Natural News to learn more about this kind of stuff, naturalnews.com. But what you're looking for is beyond organic, or your local hippies, basically. Find out your local hippies, or maybe they're doctors. Who knows? but the people that are just selling it from the back of their trucks or what have you. And, am I 100% sure that they're not using pesticides, or am I 100% sure that they are 100% sure that they know they're not using GMO seeds? No. But it falls in the realm of something called personal responsibility, which is something we've lost in our country. We've given up our personal responsibility in exchange for security and regulation. And we know that security. What does security result in? It results in programs like FAST and Viper and the TSA and all this other intrusive crap that gets us nowhere. That's where security ends up. As far as regulation, well, the MMS was supposed to be regulating British Petroleum in the Gulf of Mexico, and we can see how well they did. British Petroleum bought the Mineral Management Service off. They bought the inspectors off with porn, prostitutes, methamphetamines, drugs, and hotel rooms, and in exchange for looking the other way instead of regulating and monitoring British Petroleum. So, both security and regulations need to get out of a free market. If America is supposed to be a free market, which it's obviously not, it's fascism is what we have, but you can't have security and regulation in a true free market. It's the opposite of that. There was a couple other things I want to cover here. Speaking of the Gulf of Mexico, I don't know how many people know this. Another oil rig blew up, I think today. It's not in the Gulf of Mexico, but it's in a Louisiana bayou, which that's basically the Gulf of Mexico. Of course, there's no oil coming from, there's no damage from the deep horizon. So, right now they're saying there's no damage from this one that just blew up in a bayou. But we know they lie, so hopefully people in Louisiana will be keeping an eye out and report anything if they can find any leakage. Now, what's interesting about this is, and speaking of climate change, many of y'all know that they just had a summit in Cancun, or they're still having it. The countries aren't going along with it anymore. They're pretty much letting the United States and Britain and who I consider the New World Order countries to pretty much keep it. And I guess we Americans will be stuck with taxes as long as we do nothing to stop it. But Japan pretty much told them to go stick it. Japan actually said they're not going to renew the Kyoto protocols. They're done. They're not going to comply. And I think that's a major step. And from what I understand and what I've read, many other countries, the eastern countries have pretty much told the United States and others that are pushing this stuff. There's huge money in the global warming scam. There was huge money. The carbon credits they're selling and building up and everything else are basically, you buy a carbon credit, you pay for a carbon credit, and so that way I bought a carbon credit and it says however many pounds of carbon, right? And what that means is that you can use so many pounds of carbon. Like you can fart, actually fart, and buy a carbon credit to pay back the earth for your gas. But the thing is, you're not paying back the earth. You're paying back Al Gore and company, because they're the ones that are controlling the carbon credits right now. Their companies are behind it. And what do they do with that money? They don't do anything with it. They're all shell corporations. They're all shell games. I know a lot of people argue with me on that and tell me how good they are, but that's their problem. They can research it. An example of a good humanitarian, a good philanthropist that didn't quite do their job is Bono, the lead singer of Bono. I think he's got I forget what his organization is, Bono One or something. But it turns out his organization is to get charitable donations brought in, and then he's supposed to pay it out to other charitable organizations. Well, the fact of the matter is, it just came out that like 85 or 90% of all the money brought in is paid to upper management. So it's a big shell game. I mean, I would love to run an organization like that, well, I would love it to actually give out the money to real charities, but hey, if I can convince everyone in the world to give Sancho Early Jones millions of dollars a year, and I'll go ahead and take that money, and I guess I could do what minimum management service did, and sit on hookers, porno, and hotel rooms. I guess my drugs would be pot and alcohol, but I wouldn't do that. But Bono is doing that, and the point is Gore, his carbon credits are the same thing, and the point is Japan and these other countries are finally waking up to it, and they're not continuing with that stuff. They're done. So there's a lot of important things going on in the world right now, and that we all need to be paying attention to. It's like you were. I was talking to a forum member, SHTF411.com forum member, Papa Bear, the other night, and we were talking about the micro agendas, all the little puzzle pieces that are starting to be seen for what they are, and we are seeing them for what they are. Everything is coming around. We're seeing the banking scandal. It turns out that the housing scandal, which they had everyone on every major network saying it was you and I, the common people, it was our fault. It was the common people's fault that we overextended ourselves and bought these homes, and we should have been smarter than that. Well, no, that's not the case now. Now we know for sure what the case was. These mortgage brokers, who are basically bankers, they work for the banks, were getting orders from the banks to go out and sell, give everyone a loan. And then the banks were taking these along, Wall Street. They're all the same. The banks, Wall Street, they're the same people. we can, you can slice it a million different ways, and you still end up with the same thing. But they're paying these mortgage brokers to basically give out loans hand over fist, which drove up property values, and then you had to come up with different creative ways to actually do the loans so people could actually get the loans to buy the homes that had the inflated values. So I used to be familiar with a lot of that. But anyways, it turns out that part of it was a scam. So it was kind of like that's a scam. Blame it on the people or however, but that's the banks. The banks mismanaged their position, and no problem for them. Now, what they also did is through mortgage-backed securities, they bundled those mortgages up and sold them as securities. And European banks were the main people, I shouldn't say the main, but one of the main people buying them. And where it gets really tricky is they're so profitable, they couldn't get enough idiots to buy homes. So they got plenty of people to buy homes, and the property values went through the roof. But what they actually did is they started taking these mortgage-backed securities, and let's say you've got 10 homes, 10 homes in Kansas and Wichita, Kansas, 10 homes, 10 identical homes. Well, they take these 10 homes in Wichita, Kansas, and they would roll those 10 homes into the same homes into several different packaged securities. So every single, group that the European banks bought were the same homes. It wasn't even different homes. They were it was a scam. And if you want to know where the TARP money went, it just came out that most of that TARP money went to European banks to pay them hush money, so they'd be quiet and not say anything. And folks, what this has done is our dollar's crashing. Von Hellman had a thread running that I don't quite remember the thread title name, but it was basically what's going on in the grocery store. And the fact is, in the grocery store, the prices are going up, and the packaging size is going smaller. So basically, to get the same size that we used to get, the price would have gone up. But the other scam they're doing is the price will stay the same, but your actual portions get cut in half or less. So that's what our dollar's doing. Our dollar's just dropping, and the repercussions are going to be immense and felt for a long time. And because of this, it's not official policy, but it's something that we've always seen, which is when the U.S. is in financial difficulties, we always end up in a war. And China has not been cooperating. They didn't devalue their dollar, or their yuan, I believe. It's not yen. It's spelled differently. Washington asked them to devalue theirs, and they said nope. And so Washington kicked off a trade war with China. And, where we're going, because we know we can see the pattern through time, through history, the cyclical nature of how the United States government works, is they go to war. And right now, America, the United States, I'll make a distinction in a minute, but the United States is training with South Korea to, they're doing a war game to invade North Korea, and they're doing it right off North Korea, but it's a war game. It's just all pretend. But their stated mission is to send North Korea a message. Now, China, has treaties. They are North Korea's ally, and so these war games, it's been proven. There's been a few incidences where they've tried to claim that North Korea started this or started that. There's been several instances where they the one South Korean ship was sunk, which also happened to be during a time of a U.S.-South Korean war game. But there's been several of these incidences where it always turns out that it was either U.S. involvement or South Korean involvement, or they just can't figure out when it all comes out in the wash. They can't figure out who did it. But it's pretty obvious for the first 24 to 48 hours. They were blaming North Korea ad nauseum, and trying to provoke a war. But it turns out, after a little bit of investigation, it's impossible. And so we have that war game going on right now, and then I think that goes on through the 6th of December. And then the U.S. is going to, in the same Yellow Sea, I believe it's the Yellow Sea, is going to have war games with Japan to another, set of war games, again, with the target being North Korea. And then following that war games, I believe, starting on the 10th or 11th, we're going to be playing war games again with South Korea, with the target being North Korea again. So we're looking at the entire, this is December 3rd, we're looking at the next 15 days or better of war games, all targeting North Korea. Now, let me ask you all, how would you feel if, say, Mexico and Russia were doing war games in the Gulf of Mexico with the purpose of mock drills to invade Louisiana or Texas? Yeah, we wouldn't stand for it. We would, that would actually send us to war. We wouldn't stand for it. And that's what is being done to North Korea and China right now by the United States. And, this is probably the last point I'll make for the night. Go ahead and wrap it up here pretty quick. But, when you look at China and you look at their leaders are engineers, they're builders, and they're businessmen. They did their time in building the country, truly building their country. And so they are real seasoned leaders. They are people that know how to get things done, and they understand processes of how society works. Now, if you look at the United States, it's not we. I mean, it's hard because there's the people and then there's the government. And you want to look at the government, they're all elitists. You can take Palin, you can take Obama, they are elitists. None of us will ever sit at a table with them and have them look at us any other way than servants. That's how they see us. They see us as peasants. They see us as less than them. They see us as stupid, even though Palin can't figure out if it's North Korea or South Korea, and Obama can't figure out how many states there are. These are all things to keep in mind. Let me take a caller, and then I'm going to finish that thought. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Sancho.
Hello.
Hello, Sancho. This is Von Hellman.
Hey, Von.
How are you doing tonight? I'm doing fine. I'm just listening to the show.
Oh, I'm on a rant.
Oh, I heard you. You're going on about a lot of different things. Thought I'd jump in the conversation with you and have at it with you. What's the topic now?
Well, I just got done explaining how China Their leaders are engineers, builders, and men of industry. And we come over to Washington. Those aren't our leaders in Washington, D.C. They're a bunch of cutthroat lawyers who made their millions before they were in Congress, and now they've got more millions because they're in Congress, but they made their millions off of lawsuits and torts and legal actions. They know nothing about how a society runs or how to make a society profitable. And you can look at America's falling apart. And where I was going with that is, if they do attack North Korea, because they've got war games going from right now, I forgot when they started, but they're going all the way through the middle of December. And if it's really highly likely, especially with the banking information coming out, that we could see something happen before the end of December. And the thing that people need to understand is, we're not going to be able to sustain anything more than a blitzkrieg attack. We had these $1 million bombs. Well, if we don't take out the absolute top-notch strategic targets, we're sunk. We don't have. I was talking to someone about sustainability, and they said, "Well, we do have the factories," but my point is we don't have the people trained to work the factories anymore. That people that were trained to work in factories have been gone. They haven't been working in factories in the United States for 30 years. So,
well, I think if
sustained war, we're in trouble. Go ahead.
I think that the factories would come back to a certain extent. When you have a lot of people that are out of work or desperate for money to feed their families, they'll rethink about working in factories, and they'll learn pretty quick. It's always it's the same thing with foreigners that come to the United States to work. None of them speak English when you need them to, but on payday they understand. I'm here for my paycheck, and they understand that really well. So the same thing kind of applies with the factories. But the war games that you're mentioning over there, and a lot of that's just a bunch of back and forth, chess moves, the pounding the chest and trying to out-intimidate each other, while the war machine, is making billions and billions of dollars for their investors and everything else. That's all it is. It's world domination through military power, and unfortunately, the people in America are too blind to. Well, I don't know if it's not that they're too blind. A lot of them know it, but they're just completely helpless to do anything about it. And so, my point on that is that. You're going to see a lot of that stuff that's going to go on just because all the money that's being made under the table by the people up in Congress and all the people within Washington that make all that money.
See, my point is this, and I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but if people like, but well, I can definitely say it about you. Let's say if people like you or I or a couple other people I can think of on the forum were in charge of the purse strings in Washington, then in the case that we did go into a blitzkrieg attack on God knows who this time, then we could probably mobilize the people in short order to sustain that war effort that we would start. Obviously, that's where the situation we're in. We're looking at a preemptive strike. That's the policy now is preemptive strike. Which means,
it's preemptive on everything, whether it's preemptive strike or whether it's airport security, any of that type of stuff. It's all preemptive. The mentality of the people within the United States, for the most part, it's just mind-boggling to me. I was speaking to a lady that regularly goes through the airports and flies, and she had just gotten back from a trip, and I asked her. I said, "Well, tell me what your experience was with airport security," and she's like, "Well, it's just." It's just really serious nowadays. And I'm like, well, doesn't that upset you? Or, don't you think, don't you think it's crossed the line? And her attitude was like, well, it's part of air travel. If you want to do it, you've got to do it. There's no way around it. You have to submit to those type of screenings and everything else if you want to participate in air travel. And just completely submissive in that regard. And I can't understand the mentality of the people that put up with that type of stuff. I really don't. I refuse to fly because I will not allow myself to be put in a position to have to go through that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, but the thing is that mentality is the majority now. I know Micro Carl had posted on the Black Friday raids on the stores by these people trampling over, and I didn't see them though till today, and I'm just awestruck at that's all America is now. They're just huge fat consumers, and
it's such we you and I, or I should say, the people like us, the ones on the forum board and everything, we're constantly talking, and you hear it in the media of the disconnect of the people that are in Washington, D.C. People are saying the people in Washington, D.C. just don't get the people. And the more I think about it, I think it's actually in reverse. I just don't think the people get it. I think it's the people that are so disconnected from reality that they're being taken advantage of because of their ignorance. And it's just mind-boggling. You step outside of the box, you're able to look in, and you're like, man, what are these people? I mean, who would spend a week in the parking lot of a Walmart or what was it? I don't remember what store it was.
Best Buy.
They stood Best Buy for a week in the parking lot. And I'm thinking to myself, not only do I have better things to do with my time than spend a week in the parking lot, regardless if it was fun or not, but how do you support yourself? I mean, it's just mind-boggling, the mentality of the people. I'm so tired of even trying to figure it out, But it is. And in regards to Washington, D.C., and the lawyers, as you said, all of them being lawyers and all that, they're just gaming the system, and you get up into Washington, you don't change the system changes you, and everybody is so corrupt up there. Wiley posted the great thread about the open mic on the Senate floor, and I think it was Joseph Lieberman that said, it's all rigged, it's all, the whole thing is rigged, But it's been that way for so long. It's just the standard practice in Washington, D.C.
Well, let me ask you this question. Now, these lawyers, they don't represent me. I'm a free man. Till the day I die, they do not represent me. Now, it's looking really likely. I mean, I don't need to be a mind reader here. Every day you turn on the news or you look at the news online, they're either wanting to preemptively attack Iran, which Iran's fallen off the map, and now we're looking at China and North Korea.
I thought it was Somalia now or something. It changes every day.
Well, we're all over the world. There's 800, I think 800
military bases
across the world, and there's several ongoing conflicts. A lot of people don't know, but the Philippines, we're in a conflict there as well. And but the question is this: is so far what?
I was going to say in South America and Mexico, the United States government's in covert operations there too. I mean, they're everywhere. You're right, everywhere.
The Fourth Fleet was in the Caribbean, and their stated goal down there was to go boots dry and be in the littorals, which basically it was also patrol the green waters. They were saying that they were going to be in the freshwater rivers, they were going to be on the land, and they were going to be just offshore where the different governments and the different people could see the ships, so they would know America was watching. And that's insanity. But my question is this: is when these psychopaths, these parasitical lords in Washington, D.C., when they do pull that trigger, and these military personnel, they should just sit down. They should sit down and refuse unlawful orders. But that's what the Oath Keepers are about. But you're again talking about the military people. A lot of them are just your average sheeple, and they're okay. Well,
doesn't it just ring sad? It rings sad to me that the United States even has to have an organization called the Oath Keepers, which then directly says that there are so many people that are not keeping their oath or doing such corruption that you need an organization of people that are standing up saying, hey, we're keeping our oath, we're doing what we're supposed to, maybe not the others, but we are. It's just a sad reflection. The people they just don't get. It's just, it's mind-boggling. I don't even.
Well, when you sign on to be an oath keeper, that's almost like from what I've looked and heard and seen from different articles, a lot of times that ends up as a career-ending move. So by signing something that says that you will uphold what you swore to do, it actually ends up ending your career, which is that's if you want to talk about mind-blowing concepts, that to me is incredible. But my question is this:
it's like don't rock the boat, don't rock the boat or you get thrown over, Then that's just
so. Will you? Because my answer right now is no. But here's the question: when these parasitical lords in Washington D.C. pull the trigger, whether it's Iran, China, I think the whole thing's going to go up. And what I think is that we could end up with some serious problems in the United States. And my question is, would you fight for these people in Washington, D.C.? They don't represent me.
No, honestly, I'll tell you that, and this is going to be not taken very well by many people, but not only will I not fight for the people in Washington, D.C., I refuse to or ever will fight for the United States government, the military, or any type of draft. I will refuse. I will be a draft dodger. Not that I'm one of those type of people that will put a flower. I'm not a flower child. I'm not the type that will put a flower in a gun barrel or whatever. I just don't believe in putting my life on the line for a country so people can rush into Best Buy at 4 o'clock in the morning to buy consumer goods, or put my life on the line for a country that has a bunch of criminals in Congress and the different branches of the alphabet agencies committing such horrific crimes and violating the Constitution on a minute-by-minute basis, on a daily basis. It's just, I would never do it. I don't believe in the country. I'm not, and it sounds very unpatriotic, but that's just where I stand. I will not fight for something that I don't believe in. Do I believe in the United States? I think the United States is a beautiful country. I think there's some great people there. I think that it's got a lot of wonderful things to offer the world, but I think it's been so hijacked and so far down the wrong road that it's not even worth it. So, yeah, I'll probably catch a lot of flack from those that are saying that I'm unpatriotic or that I don't deserve to live in the land of the free because I'm not standing up for it. But no, my distant relatives, they all fought in the wars and they stood up for the country. I've got, my great-great-grandfather fought in the Civil, just all of that stuff. So, yeah, they paid the price for my freedom.
Actually, I want to hear your family. Go tell everyone right now, go through that a little bit about your family background. A lot of people would say, because I want to finish up with something, but a lot of people would say, oh, that bastard, his family, they've never done anything for this country. So repeat what you just said about your family service.
Well, no, let's see. It was my I'm going to have to stop and think for a second. My great-great-grandfather that fought in the Civil War. He was wounded in 4 different battles and wounded on the battlefield in 4 of the largest battles. One was, I think, in Atlanta. One was in, I forget where the others are without looking it up. But Ulysses S. Grant finally had to ask him to step down because he'd served his country so well and was released with medals and was considered, a Civil War hero. However, what my family has done in the military and what they've served for the country to create the freedoms for other people that are here today is completely different than what we face today. Those freedoms that they allowed created a situation that the lawyers have been able to move into Washington and take over. Everything from World War II on has just been a crock. It's just been one fleecing moment after the next with stealing rights, stealing, every kind of ounce of wealth that can possibly be done. It's sad. And so I know that everything that my family that has served in the military has worked for, I consider it to be somewhat in vain because of what the representatives in Washington, D.C. have done to the country. Will I fight for my community? You're damn right I will. I'll pick up a rifle and I'll shoot any person that's trying to do anything that's wrong or, that's attacking anybody or anything like that. But, as far as I'm concerned, I've said it over and over again, the federal government of the United States needs to be completely abolished through a very peaceful, legal vote, and all the power returned to the states and then returned to a local level where it can be more controlled and more governed for the people in those areas. But the federal government is so out of line, it's just unreal,
Well, what you bring up, and I don't necessarily, I'm indifferent toward the name or the word patriot or the name, being branded as a patriot. But, part of it is remember the whole thing, enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, I understand the average masses that are hurtling over each other and stomping on each other in Best Buy. They're the same ones at the football event that are cheering and cheering and cheering. And, they look at it as a team issue. Well, I'm on this team, and they got your back no matter what you've done. Well, America was based on principles, and it didn't even have to be America. It's human dignity is where things were supposed to be at and where they should be at. And the fact is it's enemies, foreign and domestic. And the people in Washington, they are domestic enemies. They are terrorists themselves. They are holding the entire world hostage. The Middle East is blown to smithereens, all off of false information. It's been proven time and time again. And it's a bad
so
state
when
of
you
affairs.
say those things are now so as saying that, as claiming that, then what you're basically saying is that you're now on 10 more watch lists. You're probably going to have some men in dark suits and glasses knocking at your front door any moment. But it is the truth in the sense that how in the world can the people? I just don't see this. I don't see how you can stand up and fight for a country that has a representative that says, we need to pass the bill first so you can see what's in it, or any of the, Obama, for example. I will have the presidency. I'll have the transparency in my presidency that will show the world that America is a great nation. And then while he's saying those words, he's got a handful of lawyers that are being paid millions of dollars to hide everything it is about his personal life. I call President Obama out on this radio show and tell him to, get with the program on his birth certificate. The whole thing is a scam. He's just a puppet. I don't think that the American children can respect a president that has lied like that. I don't have anything against the man personally. I don't wish him any evil or any ill will. I just, I want to expose him for being a liar. I want to expose him for being a fraud that he is. Let him move on out and move on down the road. But, that's the whole mentality in Washington, D.C. It's just one big picnic of who we can screw over next and how much money we can make while we're doing it. And it's sad that the American people put up with it.
2008. So he began to tell me about this extraordinary event that had happened with he and 3 of his friends the night before, which would have been January the 8th. And I was listening, and, of course, I immediately picked up on the fact that he said, I've been a pilot for 30 years. So I'm thinking to myself, well, a pilot they ought to know what's in the sky and what isn't, Well, then the other thing is, he said all 3 of the people that were with him that evening were willing to talk to me. So I said, okay. Well, I call my buddy over at the Stephenville airport, and because Steve had told me that's where his hangar is for his plane. And I knew the manager, and I said, hey, this guy named Steve Allen keeps his plane out there? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, well, what kind of a guy is he? Well, he's a real nice guy. He said, I've been knowing him a year and a half, something like that. And I said, well, he's called me about something pretty strange. And then he goes, he called you too? He said, we've been trying to help him figure out what that was all morning. So I'm going, okay. So I talked to the other 3 people, and I decided to write a story about it. First of all, I thought it was an interesting story that they saw this thing above them in a little community outside of Stephenville called Selden. And they had built a little...
Were they in their plane? Were they actually in the air?
No, they were on the ground.
Okay.
And they had been clearing some brush and stuff. And kind of finished up that and decided to, build a little campfire light thing. And they were just out there in the... Selden's a real rural place. But something over. And Steve said this thing was huge. He told one reporter one time that, you don't understand, this thing was as big as a Walmart. And he always said he regretted saying that because that's what went all over the place, and he felt like he sounded like a hillbilly, Anyway, he said as it was going over, he was looking at a horizontal set of lights. And as he was watching, trying to think of what this could be, the lights broke apart and turned into two vertical sets of lights. It flew back towards Stephenville and kind of stopped there. And anyway, he said he just couldn't figure out what he was seeing. And they went. One of the men that was with them, just 4 people that said they too had seen things. I wrote another story about that the next day. One of those people that I wrote about was a constable. He had seen it. Well, I'm going, you can't get much better than a constable on a UFO story. Elected officials don't talk about stuff like this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. And it snowballed from there. And once the Associated Press reporter Angela Brown interviewed Ricky Sorrells, it went international in about 14 hours. And it was just an incredible, after that we started having news trucks roll in, all kinds of phone calls from radio stations, TV stations. It was just the wildest thing I've ever seen.
Now, didn't the interview with Ricky Sorrells, that was a trick, was it not? Did they not con him into that and lie to him in regards to what they were going to do at that interview?
At the time, Ricky, he was not familiar with media, and he did not know what Associated Press was. They did identify themselves as Associated Press. But when they started to take pictures, he goes, whoa, I don't really want any pictures taken. And she goes, it's only for our website. We're just going to post them on our website, Okay. So he goes, I guess that's okay. Well, a couple of hours later, his wife was in one of the retail stores here that had televisions, and he was all over the screens, and she's calling him going, what did you do? You're all over the TV. And he was going, what? And he did not understand exactly. And Angela Brown told me later that was the first time any story she had done that people had taken the photos. But, they've gotten the photos off the site. But as you and I know, Associated Press is a subscription, and that's where a lot of news papers and news outlets, once they subscribe, they can use anything that they have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a combination that she didn't really tell him how far it could go because she didn't think it would go that far, and he didn't understand exactly what they represented, you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see 2 stories here. One is just the incredible...
Got in his pickup and left, okay? And it was disturbing to him. So they go in the house of Mike Odom. It's Mike Odom's place. And his wife had just come home from work, and they're telling her, he doesn't believe this huge thing just flew over. It was like something from another world, whatever. And she's going, oh, yeah, right, whatever, And they're going, no, really, really. So she calls the guy that had left. His name was Lance Jones. And said, what is going on? Are they just pulling my leg or what? He said, get outside. It's coming back. He was over on the highway, but, you know, he could still see it. So we all go outside again. It comes back over, but this time there are two F-16s, and he told me that day they were either F-16s or F-15s, and the only way you could tell the difference is by looking at the tail, and, you know, he wasn't sure, but he said it was one of those. I said, okay. So,
wow.
Then the wife comes out, you know, and they all three see it, you know, again. It was the first time for her. Now, she used to be a stewardess, so she kind of has an idea of what's in the sky, too. And it was just really bizarre. But I wrote the story because I thought it was an interesting story. It was coming from people in the community, and you know how that is. You always like to read stories about people in your community, what they're doing or whatever. And I just thought, well, I'm going to write this. Now, the publisher was very much for it. The editor was in a hurry to leave that day. She kind of knew what we were working on, but she was leaving early that day. And I wrote the story, and, you know, we started trying to figure out what the headline was going to be. And normally I don't do too much with headlines, but I did that night, and the publisher did too. Usually the paginator is the one that does headlines. So it was a big deal. Do you put UFO in the headline? Or, you know, what do you put? I said, yeah, we're going to put UFO because that's what it is. It's an unidentified flying object, and they don't know what it was, so I think that's appropriate. And the publisher did also.
To clarify this, before this, you had never written on, I mean, this was,
no.
I talked to you, and you said this was basically out of your perception, your realm of reality to touch upon this topic.
I never had any interest in UFOs before this happened. You know, if I saw a show about something like that on TV, well, I might watch it and think, that's pretty good. And then I never thought another thing about it. I wasn't somebody that, you know, bought books about it or magazines.
For tonight's show, we'll be discussing the Stephenville Lights with Mrs. Angela Joyner. She was a regular reporter, but then the Stephenville Lights changed all that. Her journey into the unknown began, and as they say, the rest is history. You can learn more about Mrs. Joyner at her site, angelajoyner.com, and that is ANGELIAJOINER.com, and also at StephenvilleLights.com. Just go ahead and punch both those in the Google search engine or any search engine you choose. Tonight's program will be broken down into two segments. The first hour will be an interview with Mrs. Angela Joyner, followed by another hour of open lines. The call-in number to tonight's show is 760-542-3929. That is 760-542-3929. Real quick, last night I talked to Blog Talk Radio. Their program was completely messing up. That could explain Monday night, because when I was on with Diane Hennessy-Powell, I couldn't get my microphone on, and I assumed that night it was me, but this night it turned out to be, you know, I think it's all Blog Talk Radio. So everything's working good tonight, though, and we'll get on to the show. Diane? What am I saying? Angela, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Good. I was a little flustered. I had to give everyone a little bit of a heads up about what happened last night, and I appreciate your patience in all this.
Oh, no problem. Since I run into those sort of things myself sometimes, I know how it is.
Now, you've got a radio show yourself, and can you tell us when that is and where to find that?
Oh, sure. I have a show on Friday nights. It's 9 to 11 p.m. Central Time. It's called The Joyner Report, and you can get to it on my website, angelajoyner.com, or it's through UFO Paranormal Radio Network.com. There's probably some of your listeners that are familiar with that. That is Joe Montano's setup, and we have a good time in there. I've interviewed some very interesting people, and I'd be happy to have anybody tune in.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about it. Since, with Blog Talk Radio kind of screwing up the schedule, I don't know that I'll be doing a show tomorrow night, and I actually may just go ahead and kick back and tune into your show. So tell us about yourself. Tell us what's the deal with Stephenville. What happened?
Well, I received a phone call on January the 9th from a gentleman named Steve Allen, and this is January the 9th, things about it, or it just wasn't anything really that particularly interested me, and I really, I hate to say this, but I kind of thought that it was a unusual group of people that really saw these things. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's no nice way to say it, but I kind of thought, people that talked about this stuff were nut jobs, okay? So, but, I knew these people were okay. They were credible. It was just, I don't know how to explain it. But anyway, UFO ended up going in the headline. And just the first part of the headline made it above the fold. It wasn't the main story on the front page. Mm-hmm. And Steve Allen, one of the things that he wanted me to do was put his phone number in that article. I said, are you sure you want me to put your phone number in here? Because, I don't know if that's a good idea. He said, oh, yeah, do, because I know this thing was so big that somebody else saw it. I think a lot of people saw it. That's what he said. They had to have. And I thought, okay. And we put that in there, and the next day it ran, which would have been January the 10th. I started getting all kinds of phone calls, and he began getting all kinds of phone calls. And I was just kind of blown away. I thought, oh, my God, what went on here? And then I was getting calls. Is that the reason we have all of this increased military traffic today? Did you find out what it was? And I'm thinking, increased military traffic? Well, I didn't know about that because I was inside in the office. Mm-hmm. So when I left to go to lunch at about 12:30 or so, out in the parking lot, as I got to my car, I hear this boom, 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 and I look up, and it's two military transport helicopters, and they're pretty low. And I'm going, well, I wonder if this is what everybody's talking about, Well, it wasn't just those helicopters. It was jets. It was you name it. Now, we're all used to seeing jets here because Fort Worth is north of us and about 70 miles, and there's a base there. And it used to be Carswell. Now it's called the Naval Joint Reserve something. So anyway, they fly over us with those jets to get to the Brownwood military operating area, which is a little south. So we're used to that. And but there was so much more, and nobody could believe it, So I picked out about 4